Welcome back to another edition of AI Rabbit Holes. And this is a video series where Daniel Lynch is here once again. This is a video series where we just kind of go down the rabbit holes of AI, and they really never end. There's always some rabbit hole somewhere as AI pops up every day on the news. And in this edition, we're going to talk about the AI space race. There's all these different models, all these different companies coming up to the top, crashing down. Most recently, we saw DeepSeek a few weeks ago really shake up the AI space, really exposed OpenAI and US big tech overall, in my opinion. So, Daniel, before I keep rambling, welcome to this episode, and let's hear your take on the AI space race right now.
Yeah, when we look at history, right, it doesn't tend to always repeat, but it tends to rhyme. That's the famous quote. And when we look at what's going on right now and the parallels to, Oracle versus Microsoft back in the day, and then you look at, AOL, dial up versus all these different providers that appeared overnight during the dot-com boom. We're witnessing that with AI right now. And the question is, what are the ethical concerns of, let's say, DeepSeek, which their model appeared overnight, does a phenomenal job. We would all agree. It's very impressive with the ability to do research and basically agent functionality. But then there's also the criticism of how did they get there so quickly? Were they using NVIDIA chips? Were they using OpenAI technology? And if so, is AI something that is completely owned by someone, right? The answer probably from a business perspective is yes. But isn't OpenAI doing the same thing with everybody else's data to train its models? Where do we draw the line in the sand here with hypocrisy?
Yeah, it's so funny. They're trying to play the victim now and saying, "Oh, Chinese DeepSeek stole our data," but it's like all the blogs that I've written, all the blogs that you've written, and the videos I've made, they're stealing that from me. Where's my compensation? And they're not the only ones doing that. Google Gemini's doing that with AI overviews and all the other stuff. Meta's Llama, all the big US tech AI models are stealing our data. So where do you really draw the line here?
Well, it's, the robots.txt file, there's official directives now to block all those crawlers, but that doesn't mean that they do, right? They can still, you can go on to either your Cloudflare or even sometimes your, various hosting platforms and view the bots that are crawling your website. They're still hitting your website. The question is, what are they scraping? I mean, you can make it where you can't be detected scraping your website. And you better believe
What's
all
the
the data on the
benefit of
internet is
doing
being.
that? Just from being noble and saying, I don't want AI to scrape my website, because now we're seeing a shift in people move to LLMs from an SEO perspective. So you're blocking off your traffic from that front. So what's the benefit of even doing that?
I would say that there is no benefit. It's like the same concept that if you think you have privacy right now in your home and that, oh, I'm not going to have an Alexa, I'm going to put my phone in a Faraday cage and no one can listen to me, right? There is no such thing as data privacy, in my opinion, to some extent. And at Empathy First Media, when we write our robots.txt file, which I actually extensively just rewrote our standardization for all of our clients, I actually encourage the crawling of all those LLM models, OpenAI, Perplexity. There's a bunch of different bots that are out there that you can actually put into your directives on the robots.txt file. But I encourage them to crawl it because in our Google Analytics data, Ryan, we've seen for a lot of our clients that we are actually getting referral traffic from AI models, particularly OpenAI and ChatGPT, that the future of search is not going to be a conventional search engine. It will be a search engine within an LLM. And Google is essentially ChatGPT for search, the OG version, if you think about it, right? Because they've been using AI for a while. But more and more, we're going to see those SERP results, especially at the top with the AI generated results. That is where people are going to actually be getting information, not scrolling all the way down. And if anything, they're going to click on the source or the link and maybe go to your website. But since Google implemented that, they say that the click through rates are down across the board.
I
The
believe
people
it.
are getting, for informational queries, they're not going to the website. They're just reading the snippet and getting that information, getting that dopamine hit, and then going on to the next task or whatever they were going to do, not even visiting that website. So you can't even pixel them. You
Where
can't,
did Google get that information?
yeah, from your website, and they're
Exactly.
monetizing,
So
So just
let's,
like the
yeah, I
same.
want to circle this back to the AI space race portion again. That was a really good perspective you had on the SEO element. So I guess where I'm going with this next, Daniel, is I look at like an AI wrapper business model, or I look at these AI SaaS tools, which is funny because, if you would have asked me before DeepSeek, what is the value of an AI wrapper? It's just a white labeled version of ChatGPT or whatever other LLM that they're doing, and then upcharging on the API calls. But ever since DeepSeek, in my opinion, kind of exposed the whole AI industry, I think AI wrappers just got a lot more valuable because they can integrate DeepSeek's API and all the other models that come with DeepSeek for a tenth of the price that they were already doing it with OpenAI models. What are your thoughts on like the AI wrapper and the AI SaaS tool industry?
Well, it's evolving quickly. And so, what I think we will see eventually at some point are these AI wrappers, these white label tools. They have to somehow be unique, or at some point, they're just going to be another white label OpenAI ChatGPT, like you're alluding to,
Like
right?
most of them
But
are.
where the interesting part is the tools that evolve to combine or integrate multiple models. That's where Perplexity is winning the space race, in my opinion. Is if you go to Perplexity, you can connect um, DeepSeek, I believe it's Grok 3, all
OpenAI O3.
the Anthropic models, and actually create projects in there that have a larger research database file limit or file size than Claude or OpenAI, connected to the internet at the same time. And then you can jump between the models in real time and it will give you follow up questions. It's phenomenal. I use Perplexity every day, even more than OpenAI or Claude, because what I like to do is just hit a button using OpenAI, maybe run it through Claude afterwards, and I get the best of both for the output, the research, because OpenAI and DeepSeek may be better at research, but Claude is better at writing. And so you can do it all in one, and you can even use the Perplexity API to accomplish this. So, as we start to see really interesting tools evolve more and more, it's going to be LLMs combined with each other, and OpenAI or Anthropic, unless they evolve to keep adding more and more unique functionality, they're just going to be another lane on the highway you can drive in to integrate. Because what I truly believe is that OpenAI is the AOL of the dial-up space race from the dot-com
They were the
boom.
first mover.
They're the first mover, right? We all used to use Netscape at some point, right? They were one of the first ones. But just like the Yellow Pages, everybody gets replaced. And so we are due for another DeepSeek, let's call it, to keep coming out, because the people who are building that are they going to study DeepSeek and probably use them to make their own tool to some extent, right? Or Claude, and someone will figure out how to keep leapfrogging, because in this industrial revolution, which is the most extensive of humankind, that for the first time we're not, the wheel was a big deal when that came around, right? Fire, combustion engine, printing press. Well, now we have it where all of that stuff times infinity and beyond is now evolving for the average person to not have to complete tasks. And as that goes into whether you have a robot for cleaning your home or a self-driving car, the race is on. But you better believe that with this technology, we can actually keep going exponentially quicker with the technology over and over again in a very compressed period of time. And so we will have people who just appear out of nowhere and go vertical parabolic with an IPO on the stock
It's like a
market.
crypto movement, like a crypto chart. This stuff is so exponential with how fast it's updating. Like AI and linear just don't go in the same sentence.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not linear, right? Y equals mx plus b is not the equation here. It's more of a y equals x squared, right? It just depends on what is the asymptote that they approach or that they never actually hit, right? They'll just keep going up and up until they go back down. And that's, if you look at, let's say, OpenAI, they went just straight parabolic and then they came kind of down as these other ones evolved. But then it's kind of interesting, Ryan, that they kind of go neck and neck with, let's say, an Anthropic, or Mistral has been doing a lot of great things and grown
Yeah,
exponentially
and
very
Grok
quickly.
3 is all the hype this week. I mean,
Grok
I wanna
3.
talk about that a little bit next, but in my opinion, I am super bullish on Perplexity. I'm glad you brought that up. In my opinion, I think what's gonna separate an AI model from the competition is censorship, right? Models that are more uncensored, because you look at DeepSeek, try asking it any question about Taiwan. Sorry, we can't answer that. Go look at OpenAI, ask it any question that kind of hints at OpenAI or the US politicians' agendas. It's not going to be able to answer that. So all of these models are so censored. I don't know if you saw, but DeepSeek, there was another variation of their R1 model that Perplexity just integrated into its system that's more uncensored. Now, obviously, you have to have some guardrails on there. Like, you can't ask it how to make napalm or how to rob a bank or like do anything that's super malicious, right? But I think that, when it comes to censorship, that, in my opinion, is going to be a huge selling point.
But what's interesting is censorship. You gave use cases that are justified, right? That something that's malicious that would hurt mankind. It obviously, going back to that Will Smith movie, right, with the AI of like, what are the rules of AI with mankind, right? Do no harm, etc. So it has those guidelines. But what's interesting is we remove the guidelines of, hey, let's talk about integrative medicine, high dose vitamin C for
Good example.
cancer. There's plenty of research to justify it. PubMed, WHO, most doctors, even conventional oncologists would agree high dose vitamin C has some benefit, especially when used as an adjunctive therapy to chemotherapy and radiation. But what's interesting is that the OpenAI model, when I had last checked, and even Claude a lot of times with Anthropic, would say, oh, this is not backed by research and science. You should speak to a conventional oncologist. But if you ask about chemotherapy, it doesn't really take the same tune and kind of guide you down the runway a little quicker. Versus a Mistral, which is why I identified that platform, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years ago, whenever it came out. We started using that because that was the only one at the time that actually would give information on holistic medicine versus OpenAI and Anthropic censored it. And so as we move forward, what's very interesting is that I believe what will distinguish the space race is how biased and how much you censor information, because society in the United States as well as abroad is on edge of quote unquote misinformation and very keen to the reality that misinformation is actually being defined as what people are allowed to know or not know. And that is actually censorship. And that is very authoritarian and shows that there is a lot of ethical issues here about the information, that if something pops up at the top of Google as an AI generated response, a majority of the sheep of society are headline readers and will believe at face value what is said without ever clicking on it, and then tell other people that, who then take that as the source of truth. And then you have the ripple down effect we've seen with a lot of other things. And so when we look at this, I believe the distinguishing factor is how transparent, uncensored, and how unbiased can you be, which is why Grok 3 probably does have the upper hand right now on Twitter, because we've even seen it that the owner and maker, Elon Musk, on X, it will actually correct him too. That it is not afraid to say, you know what, I know you made me and you've paid for everything, and we may not disagree, but this is the real source of the truth. And that's actually even better marketing for him to do that, if you think he's probably doing it intentionally a little bit here and there, right? Of like, look, it called me out. You'll see on tweets that he even mentioned that a couple times on his Twitter feed.
I just did a video on Grok 3, kind of exploring it and comparing it against ChatGPT and Perplexity. And one area I did test was censorship, and it was pretty uncensored compared to the other models. But then I asked it a question about child labor laws, and is Tesla using child labor for cobalt mining, right? Trying to like squeeze at it to hint at Elon Musk's unethical practices a little bit. And it did kind of navigate that really interesting. It said, no, there's no cases of it, but Perplexity said there was cases of it. So I don't know. I'm just trying to like test these models as close as I can and trying to pink at them, because they always are going to be biased. There's never going to be a case, in my opinion, where we see an AI model from a tech company that's not biased.
Well, I really feel the future of AI is going to be the ability to have more guidance programmed into it for your specific use cases, and eliminating those guardrails that are there.
Let me just say this. You can do that, right? You can install a local LLM and kind of fine tune the model that you want. But the problem is most people don't have machines power enough to run local LLMs. That's the issue. It's the accessibility issue.
Well, I think, and I've said this for a while, and I got this from Dharmesh at the HubSpot Inbound conference, really, if you're interested in AI, it's about finding a way to collect as much data efficiently as possible, and then waiting for the bridge to be built across the moat of data to connect everything. And then at some point, we will have a platform where it's, hey, drag and drop everything you wanted to learn. here's the website to scrape, here's the industry, maybe even like a quiz that says this is what my beliefs are. So you could tell it. And we've seen that on some AI tools of like, we call it like tone of voice and style of pretend you're a holistic cancer doctor and that you have experience treating stage 4 cancer from an integrative, holistic, and conventional approach. You are unbiased, XYZ, to get a certain tone of voice and style. But what if you could do the same thing for the way that data is input into the LLM to take a certain stance or position of juxtaposition, juxtaposition of play devil's advocate for every step or research and consider you're wrong using the scientific method. And that is how I program our AI agents at Empathy First Media, is using the scientific method, where if it's going to be doing research, especially in a scientific topic such as healthcare, medicine, engineering, oil and gas, prove to me why you're right using the scientific method. What was your hypothesis? What was the assumptions that were based? And that's what we do in engineering. And I believe that if we have a proof of how some of that data comes about from references, citations, sources, that will help us understand where it's coming from. But it's really, connecting to something like, let's say, a Wolfram Alpha API with science and saying, hey, like, this is the science. And here's the research, and connecting that data to say, you know what? I know that the LLM says that I shouldn't say this, but look at the science, and overriding those guardrails with pure mathematics. I mean, if you took geometry, right? A squared plus B squared equals C squared, you could derive a lot of things in science and prove to people with the research. It's just crazy that a lot of these tools don't let you do that, right? They make it very difficult to get around some of the stuff. And let's not even talk about if we try to use Google Gemini to generate images, right, Ryan? I mean, you never know what you're gonna get or you're looking at. It's confusing.
Yeah.
So.
And speaking of misinformation, bias, and censorship, I just gave a talk on AI this week at 1 Million Cups, kind of the local chapter here. Someone asked me a really good question on that topic of, what are we going to do with AI when there's so much misinformation? How do we know what's real? How do we know what's not? And I said, I'm glad you brought that up, because in my opinion, this is the biggest inflection point in society. It's going to be when the average person asks the question, was that real? When they heard something, when they viewed something, when they read something, the average person, the moment that they think, was that real, that will be the ultimate inflection point in society. Because people like me and you, we're already asking that question, right? We're well versed into this technology. I'm thinking of people that age 40 and 50 or older who still believe everything they see on the internet, everything they read, everything they watch, right? That's going to be the ultimate inflection point. I keep going back to that, but I truly believe it.
Well, AI can also be our 1984 moment that Big Brother's always watching too, right? That we just don't know what it's being trained on a lot of things, and the governments are involved. Everybody's looking at this stuff, and I just
That's
live with
the
the
question,
reality.
though. Was that real, right? That when most people start asking that question, things are going to take a turn.
Well, if you look at what's going on with society, just not in the US, but just abroad, everyone is having an awakening, right? And so, if you look after the bubonic plague, we had the Renaissance, right? So we had a major epidemic, we had the Renaissance, and we had an industrial revolution. It's very similar to what we're going on now that, for the first time in a long time was since the last big epidemic was the Spanish flu of 1918, somewhere around there, right? And then look at what happened. We had the combustion engine take off. We had World War II. We had this great, awakening and period of turmoil and instability because so many things were changing. And then we had World War II. Well, look at what's going on right now with instability. Look at what's going on with how people are questioning everything. And if you imagine during the Renaissance, right, that is where we had Shakespeare writing all these great art, all these great works, and this era of thinking different, the Enlightenment, and a lot of people were fighting against. Prior to that was the Crusades in Europe and authoritarian governments programming people to think a certain way. Well, this is very similar to that. It's just that they did it in a different way. And right now with AI, it's the ability that whoever can figure out a way to prove their information is real, like you're saying, Ryan, and build trust. Governments don't want that.
No.
Media outlets don't want that, right? Everyone wants to control the narrative, but it's to the point now where I believe the way that AI becomes perfect and it just crushes every single query, it really gets dialed in, it doesn't make mistakes or hallucinations, is when we have vector databases on the blockchain where it can be studied going retroactively back to fine tune the data to not hallucinate. And because of unique hash codes that could not be modified by any human, then we have the ability to truly understand where that data is coming from. That's why Elon Musk, Doge, the government, there's talks of putting things on the blockchain so there's full transparency, so that if something changes, you can see it on the blockchain. Versus right now, if it's in a database, on a SQL database, you can change it and then hide who changed it, right?
Yeah.
Just a couple little tweaks of the metadata.
That'll be
So
super interesting when that happens. And it's always funny when you see something on social media and there's like that little copyright thing or whatever, and it says not verified by the fact checkers. But then the question becomes, well, who are the fact checkers? What's the source of truth? Who's funding the source of truth, right? These are the things that go into my head when I see things like this. But I'm going to finalize this episode. This has been a really good chat about another AI rabbit hole. Daniel, if you had to give a prediction on who you think is going to quote unquote win the AI space race, let's say at the end of 2025, let's just call it there. Who do you think is going to be on top?
someone we don't know about yet.
You think so
Someone
by the
that's
end of the year?
working. I think someone in a basement or some boiler room with a bunch of smart nerds, or someone who's just thinking outside the box, is going to figure out a way to make a tool that takes market share overnight, that will be able to, because anything that competes can get funding very quickly, right? If it has the right use case, everybody will invest in the next AI tool because they go parabolic very quickly. I believe that we will start to see platforms emerge, take market share. And then the question is, does OpenAI and Anthropic buy it? Or do they not remember this concept of Blockbuster versus Netflix? That if you think that you're on top because you own the market, well, wait till the market's redefined with a competitive edge and that you knew about it first, but you doubted them. And then you took the stance of, well, we're not going to do that because we don't think it works. And then when you do know it works and jump on board, you're done, right? And I don't think OpenAI is going to disappear anytime soon, but I do believe that we could have another tool just emerge very quickly that probably is already on the internet if you look for it, but there's all these new platforms emerging by the day. And
It's crazy. You go to the LLM leaderboard on Hugging Face, there's like 20 new models a day.
And think about this, Ryan, right? I'm a developer. I've designed websites for 15 years now. We can design websites already with Web 3.0 integrations with your crypto wallet. So imagine if you had if you went to a website and then you logged in with your Coinbase wallet, and then all of your data of how you want things to appear in search results and your personalization and fine tuning, it automatically integrates into that website for you to go do searches online to some extent, right? A perplexity type play. But that's data you control because it's in your Coinbase wallet as an NFT. Because no one thinks about this, but what is a non-fungible token? What is the application of that? There hasn't been a lot of really good real world use cases. But what if it was a vector database of all the data that you wanted to study and learn that you own that no one else can touch? And you keep fine tuning it and make it where the average person can connect to something that will just give them exactly what they're looking for and not have to worry about the smoke and mirrors.
For sure. I'll give you my answer quick and then we'll kind of cap this off here. This is going to be a little more obvious. I do believe at the very end, probably the end of 2025, maybe in 2 to 3 years, I do think Google actually still has the best shot of being on top. And the reason I say that is really two reasons. One, the infrastructure, just how much they own throughout the country, throughout the world, and then also their data, right? I mean, look at, they have the most data, I would imagine, in the history of the world. They also have some of the smartest people working there. So I could also see maybe XAI doing more than what people think. My reasoning behind that is Elon Musk is, I think, the richest person in the world today. And look at all the political power that Elon Musk is gaining in the Trump administration. So who knows what bills they're going to pass, what they're going to block, all the funding for all these data centers and infrastructure. I think that's actually more important than what people are realizing when it comes to the AI race.
Yeah, I agree, Ryan. I mean, Google's in a very good position for sure. There's no doubt. They have all the APIs. They own Reddit. I mean, they're in a very good place to just keep going.
And who's to say they won't censor potential competitors coming up, right? I mean, maybe they have power for ISPs to blacklist certain websites. I know that sounds crazy, but this is where my head goes in all of this stuff.
Well, that's that's why it's all about influencer marketing with AI tools, and they've picked up on that. But what's interesting though, right, is if something provides a solution to a problem that does really well, who doesn't refer it, Ryan? And every one of these tools knows they need to have a referral program, so you get credits or get paid on it, affiliate, partner program. And as we get going, if something does really well, like let's talk about that tool SEO writing.ai, Ryan. We rode that train since the beginning, and it just kept evolving and evolving, and it's crushed it. It's doing really well now.
They just added DeepSeek.
I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, we won't ramble on about AI SaaS tools anymore. That'll be for another episode. But thanks to you all for listening or watching this version of AI Rabbit Holes. Daniel, thank you again for hopping on this episode. Be sure to tune in again next time.